Hey guys, Scott here. As traditional, we'll be going over the developer update. This one will be hitting in January, and it addresses things like 3gens, Hillbilly Strength, and Blight add-ons, which are all things that I am very happy to see get some love. So let's go over first the start, which is the 3gen things. If you're unfamiliar with a 3gen is, it's when 3 generators are very close together and it becomes almost impossible for the survivors to win because the killer can basically stay in that tiny area, chase people away from it, and it sort of just ends in like almost a stalemate where the killer's not really chasing people because they don't want to leave the generators, but the survivors have to go heal and reset in a safe spot, so they run away. It's just a giant, boring mess for both sides, and so they're trying to make that scenario not happen. Now, they hinted before that they were going to fix this by limiting the amount of regression that you could get. And originally I thought that's probably not the best way to do it. And I still think what they are doing here is not the best way to do it, but it's a really, really good step in my opinion. So what they're going to be doing now is limiting a generator's maximum regression based on regression events. A regression event is something that regresses the generator more than 2.5%, I think. For reference now, a kick will regress it by 5%. So basically, anytime you have a surge or a pain resonance or, or an eruption or any of these perks that regress generators, that's going to be a regression event. Every generator can have up to 8 regression events, which is a lot. Unless you're running like 4 stacking slowdown perks, you probably will never even come close to hitting that many regression events. Because think about it, if you have a surge and you down someone perfectly in the center of like 3 generators, then you can still down 8 people and regress those 3 gens 8 times. So it's still an absolutely large amount of regression you can do. It's double the amount of max pain reses you can get. With pain res and pop, you'll basically be able to get like full pain reses. And that's just, it's not like on all generators. It's just one specific generator can't regress 8 times. So this is a number most people will not even have to think about playing killer. It pretty much only applies to chess merchants and people that are actually trying to drag games out for, 30, 40, 50 minutes. Again, for most people, you won't even notice this. Your games will be exactly as normal, which is good and bad. It's bad because it's not really going to fix that much 3genning. I don't think most 3gen matches actually go on for 40 minutes. That's basically limited to like Knight and Skull Merchant only. That's not a very common thing. What you could have is, 15, 20-minute matches, which are still grueling and boring when they have, all of the gameplay front-loaded onto the last few parts of the actual game with the last generator. So that can be really, really boring. And there are scenarios where those could be a bit better, but still, you have to think about how much regression that is. I think most people will start getting smarter about this. Instead of wasting a gen kick on 5%, if they do want to try to still maintain this whole 3gen strategy, they will save it for the perks to regress them. But it depends on what they have. Like, obviously, Eruption is going to give more of a benefit than just kicking a generator. Surge is going to give more of a benefit than kicking a gen. So killers might actually keep track of how many times they kick something because they want their perks, which have a much larger regression amount, to take effect before the diminishing returns, and then they're capped out. So, but again, for the most part, you're not really going to notice a difference. The main issue with 3genning for me is gens spawning this close to each other, and that still happens. So we're still going to have scenarios where if the killer wants to hold a 3gen, they're still going to be able to do it, and it's still going to be very annoying to fix. But this at least addresses those fringe cases of those truly nightmarish games where, yeah, you'll no longer be able to continue applying regression to the exact same amount. So the killer's going to know that they can't regress it anymore. There's like going to be an UI indicator. So that's good for letting you know. But honestly, if you're playing killer, you should never see that indicator. There's pretty much no reason that you should have to regress any individual generator 8 times. That is an insane amount of times to regress it. So, yeah, that's what they're doing for now. I think it's a good start, honestly. However, to change things a little bit, the base damage from kicking a generator has been doubled. It used to be 2.5%. Now it's 5%, which is pretty good. That's going to save you about 4.5 seconds on a generator that doesn't have a BMP on it, just a normal generator. So that's decent. The best change they made, though, this is the only thing I care about because this actually applies to me. When you start regressing a generator now, to stop the regression, you have to repair the generator for 5 seconds. Normally now, a survivor can just go they just tap it mid-chase, and the generator stops regressing, and it's a giant pain in the ass. Makes it so kicking gens is not even a point, really, unless you have perks that specifically reference kicking generators. But with this, actually kicking gens might not be a bad idea, because they will actually regress, and a survivor can't just tap it mid-chase anymore. They have to repair it for 4.5 seconds before the regression actually stops. You've seen similar effects of this like already in the game. Like, for example, if a generator gets surged and you repair it for 2 seconds after it's surged and you leave it, it'll still start regressing even though you were repairing it after the event happened. So that sort of already happens with certain perks, but now it's going to be sort of a base kit mechanic, which good. It's been 7 years. I am a little tired of kicking gens and having a survivor just go and it stops regressing. They should have to put an equal amount of time into the event as the killer does. In fact, they should have to put more time into the event as killer does, which they do now. So this is actually kind of perfect. So yeah, that's what they're doing 3 gens. I think it's a good start. I think it's going to help the most severe cases and not really affect much else. That's more on the map generation of generators and stuff like that, but it's still a good start. So I'm happy to see that. FOV, we're finally getting 2001 PC game settings, which is very, very cool. Currently, the FOV is 87 degrees, which is surprising. I could have sworn the FOV for killer was shorter. It felt like it was like 75 or 80 or something like that, but apparently it's been 87, which is not bad. I usually play my games at like 95, so we're going to be able to slide that up all the way to 103. I can't imagine why you would not ever want to just go up to max, because having a higher FOV will let you see people that are trying to crouch, you know, right here that are normally out of line of sight. But now with a wider FOV, you'll be able to see them. So I can't imagine you would want to do anything but this. The main reason you might not want to is you have to adjust again. Whenever I run Shadowborn, I end up thinking I'm faster than I am. I end up thinking that I'm closer to the survivor that I'm chasing than I actually am. So it's going to take some adjustment if you do want to go to that. But basically, you're going to be able to go to Shadowborn FOV by default now, which is great. Obviously, Shadowborn is going to be changed now. Monitor and Abuse also does the same thing. I believe Shadowborn has been changed so that you actually gain 10 seconds of a 10% haste after getting blinded, which is surprisingly good, considering how many people have blinding at pallets. Run that with like Game of Foot and stuff. I could see you getting some pretty hefty movement speed and catching up a lot faster for players like that. So that is situationally useful in my opinion. So yeah, that's only going to affect first person. It's not going to affect survivors. Third person, you don't need a super deep FOV because it's third person, not a big deal. So it's going to be in the beta tab, I believe, starting this patch, which is cool. We'll be messing with it, obviously. The Unreal. So they made some changes to Sadako. They made actually a lot of changes to Sadako. I kind of want to just read this word for word, because I want to make sure that I'm fully understanding everything, because they did change a lot of stuff. So in the last update, Condemned would spread to all survivors who were not holding a tape whenever Sadako projected to a TV. This allowed her to spread her curse more often, but many felt this favored teleporting as soon as possible, rather than strategically during a chase, which I guess was their intention, but obviously no one does that. What they do is, as soon as the TVs turn on, teleport. Ooh, someone's condemned, kill him dead. That was the basic gameplay loop. Not very fun. Survivors started figuring out that the correct counterplay was to grab a tape early and just simply hold on to the tape, meaning that if they got hit, they gained 2 stacks, but as long as she was teleporting, they'd be immune to the stack save. So that was also developed to counterplay that, but still relying on solo queue teammates to do that is sort of a nightmare in and of itself. Sort of like playing against Legion, even though the counterplay is pretty simple. People just don't do it. So they have done a number of changes. The first is whenever she teleports, survivors within 16 meters of a power TV get a stack. This is more similar to how it worked before the change. The teleport cooldown in compensation for that has been completely removed. So now you can teleport as much as you want. And when a survivor is hooked, this part's pretty interesting. Their current condemned progress becomes locked in. So it cannot be removed anymore, which is pretty spooky when you think about it as the game goes on longer and longer. It's going to be scary holding on to high levels of condemn now. Now, to be fair, it's a lot harder to actually get condemn now, but condemn is going to be a much scarier thing because when you get hooked, I like that this encourages hooking too, by the way. We want to move away from the slugging condemn playstyle. So this encourages hooking people because then once they're hooked, they're locked in. They can't, that's their new minimum condemn. And that can be kind of spooky. So this, I think, will have the effect of giving her more built-in slowdown while also reducing the slug-heavy condemn playstyle. But it's going to make it so if you're actually going around hooking people, they can't really ignore the actual effects anymore. I don't know what effect this will have on like tunneling people out for condemn and things like that. I'm going to need better Sadako players than me to think about what this is going to do. I like the general idea of this. I like what it's discouraging, and I like what it encourages. But this is one of the things that it has so many changes. We need to just see it in game for a couple of weeks to actually understand. So, tapes have also been changed. Cursed tapes no longer protect survivors from getting condemned, and they no longer are destroyed or inflict condemn when a survivor is hit. We're basically shifting back to a lot of the older versions of this killer, which is interesting. Now, it seems like one of the eerie add-ons is almost being made default now, because cursed tapes can only be deposited in the further TV from where they picked it up. So you're not going to be able to pick it up and put it right back in another TV right next to you. You're going to have to basically run across the map. This obviously is going to give you a bunch of built-in slowdown. But again, this is kind of just like how the old Sadako was, so I don't really know how this is going to work exactly. Demanifested, where she's not in her corporeal form, has been changed a little bit as well. You can now start a chase that can help you with things like play with your food if you run around that. Also, windows will be blocked by the entity blocker as if you're in a normal chase, which is nice. They've also buffed her base kit Demanifest a little bit by adding the watch add-on kind of base kit as well. And I believe that they're going to change that add-on too. So they didn't list them here. We're going to get those on the actual patch notes, I think. But for the most part, yeah, I just really need to see some gameplay to understand how this is going to work. This seems a lot more similar to the old version of the killer. But they're heavily rewarding hooking people now. And they're heavily punishing people for greeting their condemn. So I think what this will lead to is a slower overall game where she just has to chase people more, but she has more time to do it. Which would be, I think, a healthy change, but I still wish she had more of a chase power, you know what I mean? Something like Wraith, where he has his uncloak movement speed bonus, he can actually use that to great effect in chases for anti-loop and stuff, but she doesn't really have much anti-loop there, so it can still feel really bad chasing people with her, and that's why a lot of people rely on the condemn strat. You only gotta chase them once then. So, I don't know, we'll see. I think we just need to see. Hillbilly, finally getting some changes. This has been a long time coming. Hillbilly has been a favorite killer of a lot of people for a long time, but they just keep taking stuff away from him. Despite the fact he was never a problem to begin with, the only thing that was ever a problem with Hillbilly was Carburetor Tuning Guide, Primer Bulb, and Thompson's Mix. Those add-ons were admittedly pretty busted, especially when you comboed old Tinker with them, but for the most part, Hillbilly was fine. And then they just sort of neutered him a lot. So, first change, overheat is no more. It's so funny. I remember watching that one video of McLean like criticizing my fake patch, and in the fake patch I was like, hey, we removed overheat because it's stupid, nobody likes it, and he went like on a 20-minute defense of it, saying you can't just remove things that are added. Apparently you fucking can. Look at that, amazing. So now it's sort of working in reverse. It's not an overheat, you get a bonus for charging your chainsaw that much. And the bonuses are not that crazy. You get a 5% increase in charge speed, 10% increase in cooldown reduction, which is actually pretty noticeable. And the chainsaw sprint movement speed increases as well, which is nice. So now we're in this meta where you actually want to overheat. I don't know how long it's going to take. And he's going to have add-ons that affect all the stuff that are it's obviously not listed. But I think this is a much better idea. While I guess kind of keeping the concept of overheat, I mean, not really, it's the exact opposite of it, but it's still keeping something that they coded in at some point, I guess, and then benefiting from it. Maybe that's what he was talking about. So, cool, that's good. Removing overheat is a great start. They've also done a number of changes to the base kit. The base chainsaw sprint speed has been increased, which is great, because as any Billy player will tell you, trying to do curves and stuff at tiles without engravings is basically pointless. You're just too slow to do it. So I just had a game yesterday on a viewer build. I tried so many times to get a curve around Shack or something, and I would arrive right before I get to them, and if I had that movement speed, they'd be dead. But like trying to do that stuff without the engravings add-ons, it was almost pointless. So the base movement speed being increased is very, very good. Interestingly, they also reduced the size of the chainsaw's hitbox, which means it will be harder to hit the chainsaw, but it'll also be harder to collide with the various bullshit in the world, meaning you can chainsaw more freely. What I think this means is it'll be more frustrating for newer players, but good hillbillies will actually love this because they will be able to more tightly hug corners and things like that and benefit way, way more from their knowledge of all the hitboxes and stuff like that. So I think overall that's a Billy buff. It's a skill ceiling raise and a skill floor raise, so mixed bag, I guess, for newer players there, or even people that are just not good at hillbilly like me, but we'll have to see. It might not be very impactful at all. Camera sensitivity is no longer incorrectly tied to controller sensitivity. This was a bug for 7 years, almost 8 years actually, where controller sensitivity affected that extreme movement speed for the camera you had after starting a chainsaw sprint. We don't know why that was a thing. It was just a thing for 7 years. So they finally fixed the 7-year-old bug, which is cool. So now it's the equivalent of having 100% sensitivity, which is a lot, by the way. So as soon as you start that sprint, you're going to go, boom, you can zoom extremely fast in any direction you want for about a second. And then after that, it gets heavily reduced. All of the add-ons are also being looked at as well. They're not listed. We'll check that on the PTB tomorrow. I'll make a video about all that stuff as well as we test it. That's the best way to do it. Blight add-ons finally being nerfed. Thank God. So, Blighted Rat and Blighted Crow, probably the most common add-ons you've seen on very good Blight players. These are being reduced to 2 to 3% from 4 to 6%. So that is going to be a pretty noticeable reduction. The thing is, these add-ons are consecutive. So it's every time you bounce, you gain more and more speed. So if you had both of those add-ons, you would gain 10% more speed every time. So on your 5th bounce, you'd be going 40% faster, which is kind of insane. Now this is going to be basically half of that. You're going to be moving 20% faster at your last bounce. So good. I know those add-ons are fun. I get it. I've used them before. They are really fun, but they were just so damn strong, man. Adrenaline Vial, another add-on that was just simply way too strong. To simplify it and bring it closer in line with other options, we are removing the following effects. No longer decreases time to recharge a rush by 1 second. No longer increases rush speed by 10%. Now it just increases your maximum tokens by 2% and increases the look angle by 20%. Basically in line with how it sort of used to be, which, again, good. That add-on was insane, especially with Compound 33. It's way too strong. Alchemist Ring, honestly, it's a meme at this point. Even the devs are like, why is this not been nerfed yet? Restoring rush tokens on hit is incredibly powerful, so we work the add-on entirely. Increases restoration by 20% for each consecutive rush. That's kind of interesting, actually. I like that idea of the add-on way, way more than what we currently have. So basically, every time you bounce, your next rush is 20% longer, to where the last one might, it's going to last essentially double the time of your first one. So that could just be funny to see. I'm sure some God Blights will find some insane use for that, but way more fair than what we currently had. Compound 33, which was my opinion his most broken add-on. This is the one where you could slam into a pallet and it would just break without having to swing at it, and you cool down so fast that by the time you were done breaking it, your power is back up again. It also hindered people because fuck you, why not? So all of that was removed. And now what it does is each consecutive rush, which is longer than 4 meters, increases turn rate by 33%. I don't know how useful that's going to be. That means on your 4th bounce, you can basically like 360 and shit. That's one of the things I need to see in game. That sounds hilarious. But it's even just by its description, it's infinitely more fair than what we used to have. So that just seems really funny, and I'm very much looking forward to testing it. Iridescent Blight Tag. This is the add-on that on your final bounce, you would inflict exposed on the person, so you would essentially just one-shot them. That was obviously too strong as well, because it had awkward gameplay where they even talk about it, where you could be right next to someone and you would just slam into a wall 4 times and then smack him, which is very silly. Hi, buddy. So that was pretty overpowered as well. So now, this is my favorite change by far. So Rush can now be performed without spending tokens. The bonuses to Rush are capped after 3 tokens, meaning you can't stack movement speed add-ons and achieve infinite movement speed. And now it goes on cooldown for 20 seconds after you hit a successful attack. But what this means is you can pinball forever. You can pinball the entire match until you hit somebody, and then you go on cooldown, kind of like, Chucky's cooldown, which is roughly 20 seconds. So honestly, this strikes me as an add-on that doesn't even make Blight stronger. It just changes the type of killer he is. It's sort of like Chucky, where he's guaranteed to hit when his power is up, but then he's sort of useless for 20 seconds. At least Blight has normal movement speed, though. So I will probably run this add-on so much, because just the descriptions, the description alone sounds so stupid. You can literally pinball 70 times in a row if you want. That just sounds like, I don't know. I can't really think of something more entertaining than that. So I'm very happy to see that add-on change. That is honestly just hilarious. And obviously way more fair than the old one. Yeah, I like all these changes. It addressed most of the broken stuff that Blight has. In fact, no, it addressed every broken thing that Blight has. That's pretty much it. I can't think of any other super broken add-ons on the killer. Thank God. It's been way too long. Now, for perk updates, Save the Best for Last was changed in a way that most of us assumed it would be changed, where they're just putting it in line with how it used to be before Killer Attack cooldown was buffed. So it used to be Killer Attack cooldown was 3 seconds, then it became 2.7 seconds. But Save the Best for Last was never adjusted for that, so it was just better than before, too. So now, instead of getting 80%, instead of getting 8 times 5, which is 40% at max, you're getting 32% at max, which is going to basically put it right around the same amount of time you had before killers were overall buffed. So it's going to be basically like pre-patch Save the Best for Last. Still extremely good to use. An interesting downside, though, is that you cannot mitigate loss from your stacks if you use your power. So Demogorgon, for example, is no longer a great user of this perk, because if you shred the obsession, you still lose stacks. I'm sort of mixed with this, because that made it so when I did run that perk, I could still chase the obsession. I could still, actually not worry about hitting them. I just have to use my power, which was, I still want to chase them. But now if I run this perk, I'm going to be in the scenario where if the obsession unhooks somebody and I have like 5 stacks and I want to gain more, I feel like I'm sort of inclined to tunnel the person off the hook now, because I have no way to mitigate that stack loss anymore. And I think that's going to be an unintended side effect of doing this. The obsession will actually have to be saved for last, which, definitely fits the theme of the perk, but in terms of health of the game, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. So this I like. This is a good change. This I'm not sure I like. So we'll see how that goes. Grim Embrace is a great design of a perk that just doesn't do enough. When you hook everybody at least once, you get all gens blocked for a certain amount of time, but before that, it has no effect, so they're changing that. The first time each survivor is hooked, all gens are blocked for 12 seconds. Once the killer moves at least 16 meters from the hook, that's cool. I like that. So now, in addition to giving you that giant chunk of slowdown once everybody is hooked, you now have little minor blocks as the game goes. This basically almost doubles the effect of the perk. You're going to get an additional 48 seconds of time now. So Grim Embrace actually pretty good in terms of game delay, which is pretty solid. Honestly, it seems like a good build now would be Grim Embrace and Deadlock, because now you'll have a lot of hands off gen blocking. You don't have to worry about kicking gens or taking people to specific hooks or anything. Just play the game, chase people, and shit will happen. That's good for you. I like perks like that. So I've always liked Grim Embrace. It was just too weak. Quick Gambit is dog shit. I'm not even going to read it. It's still useless. Rune no longer has the downside of being removed when someone is killed, which good. It's not even strong enough to consider using anyway, so removing that downside is fine. I wish they would buff it up to like 125% regression or something like that. Just give us something a little bit more. It's just not worth it as a hex perk anymore. Shadowborn, this is what I talked about earlier. When you're blinded, you gain 10% haste for 10 seconds, which is very significant, by the way. Most haste effects in DBD are like 5% variance. 10% is pretty good, and for 10 seconds is very significant, especially if you combine that with other perks. You can be chasing up to people or catching up to people very, very quickly. So I actually really like that change. If you really hate people blinding you at pallets, this is going to be really good to bring, because you will catch back up significantly faster. I can't stress how much 10% haste for 10 seconds is. That is a massive, massive difference. So that is going to be very useful for those type of effects. So if you hate getting blinded, Shadowborn is going to be really useful. Damn, I just realized I forgot to put a meme in one of these. I usually do that. Shame on me. Monitored Abuse is just getting, not even nerfed, it's just getting updated to the point where it doesn't have the FOV changes anymore, because, it's already in the game, so it wouldn't do anything. So, same effects of the perk with Terradius, which is the main point, but the FOV is no longer changed, which good. Honestly, made me dizzy when it kept going in and out like that, so. Ormond is also getting changed. They talk about what they're going to do here. If this is pointless looking at text and pictures, we need to actually play on it to see, so I'm glad Ormond is getting changed. I wish it was getting shrunk. Ormond is one of the few giant maps left in the game. I'm not saying shrink it a lot, just cut off, I don't know, like 20 meters from the side or something. Nothing crazy. But yeah, we'll see. It seems like they're removing that big rock wall that's on the backside and putting a bunch of just bullshit in the way. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Game modifiers. This is the stuff I'm interested in. It seems like the first limited time game mode. I wish these were like actual things you could just queue into whenever. It's going to be called Lights Out. We don't know what it is. Probably for their first mode, it's going to be something pretty uninteresting. No Terradius. It's dark. You can only use flashlights to see or something like that. Whatever. It's something different. I will take anything at this point. I will take anything that is not the core gameplay DBD loop. So, still excited. A little bit of a bummer that it says in the coming months and not in the PTB, but we'll see. It seems like they're going to talk about it soon. So, overall, good stuff. Overall, I think this is a very, very solid patch. I can't wait to test the changes to Billy and the add-ons with Blight, and even a couple of Sadako games. So yeah, overall this seems like good stuff, and I'll be playing the PDB tomorrow to get some more information about how all these changes actually practically work. That's it. Thanks for watching.